Welcome to UK Business Show, UK's premier business show where we feature business thought leaders, high achievers, and industry experts. Today's episode is brought to you by World Outsourcing Solutions Limited, a company that specializes in helping executive business owners with virtual assistant services and business growth systems. Here's your host.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the show. Thanks for joining us. Now I hope you're feeling relaxed and in a good place as you listen to us today. But if not, our guest can help. She's a lady that specialises in helping people create the right balance in life. She helps a range of clients from celebrities to CEOs, military officers to housewives. They've all experienced positive change through working with her. She's operated a yoga and wellness studio for over 10 years and has been a coach for over 20 years. And she's also a best-selling author. Welcome, Jennie Lee.
Hello. I'm glad to be with you today.
Thank you for joining us. I'm excited to chat with you today, actually, because I've seen your profile, I've looked at your website a bit, and I know that there's lots of good things that you have to share with the audience. So, yes, let's dive straight in, shall we? For anyone that maybe hasn't yet been blessed to know who Jennie Lee is, give us a little bit of background as to who you are.
Sure. Well, you mentioned that I had owned a yoga studio for 10 years, and that was sort of the beginning of my journey into the field of wellness. I had been practicing physical yoga myself for many years prior, and was then going through a divorce and needing to reestablish myself in a career. So I opened a yoga studio in Massachusetts, which I had for 10 years, which was wonderful. I established a beautiful community of people there. But as I was teaching, I really recognized the need beyond the physical practice for people to come into a sense of themselves, their own physicality, their own needs for holistic balance in their life. And I also was going through many transitions at that time. I was a young mother, had a small child, and was trying to balance between running a yoga studio, being recently divorced, taking care of a small child on my own. And so always doing that balancing act of self-care as well as work efforts and business development. So my path into the teachings that I now write and offer to my private clients came through the study of yoga philosophy. And for those of you who might not be familiar with that aspect of yoga, many people are familiar only with the physical side. Yoga philosophy comes from classic texts like the Vedas, the Yoga Sutras, the Upanishads. And so these ancient texts have philosophies of life, really, that tell us how to come into harmony within our own beings and within the world around us. So very universal principles of living that help us establish that inner peace. And so in studying those, that took me to writing my first book, which was called True Yoga. Now, fast forward many years, I no longer own the yoga studio. I still coach private clients in a practice that I call yoga therapy. And I write books on this topic. So I have 3 books out, the most recent of which came out this last fall, called Spark Change. And certainly I think everyone is of the mindset right now that change is upon us, whether we want it or not. And so I'm a firm believer that as we become more proactive in electing the changes that are necessary for our own well-being, that we become happier, definitely more fulfilled, and that there are processes to doing that, to determining what changes are necessary, what we're being called into, and how to accomplish that with consciousness. So that's some of what I hope to share with you and your listeners today.
Sounds good. Absolutely. Yes. I'm probably one of those people that you mentioned that I like the stretching. I find it beneficial doing a lot of the moves. And to some extent I've kind of parked my understanding of, that's yoga. I do kind of meditate. I do have certain other practices that I do that I wouldn't say necessarily follow the yoga philosophy. But I can see the benefit of thinking outside the normal day-to-day stuff taking time aside to maybe reflect, to contemplate, etc., etc. So love to talk about your book in a minute. Before that, though, I'm kind of quite intrigued. So what sort of got you joined? So you were a single mum, you were running kind of a yoga center. What kind of drew you into the coaching aspect of that?
Yeah, so you mentioned, and I also want to touch upon meditation because you mentioned that, and I do want to just draw the bridge between what people think of as yoga, meaning the physical stretching, and meditation, because meditation is absolutely an essential part of the entirety of what true yoga is. So those are not separate practices, and the physical movements are meant to prepare our bodies for the practice of sitting in stillness. And of course, the sitting in stillness is what helps us anchor into that deepest wisdom that we all hold within, as you and I were chatting about a little bit prior to starting the show, that what we call intuition. So I'm sure we'll get back to that. But the bridge from teaching public yoga classes that were focused more on the physical aspect of inner balance to the coaching, which I'm now focused on, came because I saw people in yoga class needing more. So what I mean by more is, maybe feelings would arise when they were in certain postures because our bodies are repositories of all of our emotional experiences in life. So what happens often in physical practice of yoga is that things get released. We're trying to release the tension, but with the tension also sometimes comes emotion. And so I saw people needing more emotional support. And I had I'd come out of a study in more traditional therapy, although it was focused on, it was a program called spiritual psychology. So I've always had this kind of holistic approach to my therapeutic practice, which is to honor the physical being, the emotional being, and the spiritual being that I'm sitting with. So because I believe that we all have these aspects of self, and that it is when we address each aspect of ourself and bring them into harmony, union with one another, and we're not split in different ways, that we find the greatest happiness in life, the greatest fulfillment in all aspects, in our relationships, in our work life. And so the coaching came very spontaneously. I was actually sharing this story with someone else today about trying to come up with a term for the coaching that I was going to do. And I thought, well, I'm going to call it yoga therapy. And I kind of put those two words together without having any knowledge that there was an international association of yoga therapists existent in the world far before I thought I came up with that term. So, but that really goes to show that as we listen to our inner guidance system, also known as our intuition, and we feel pulled towards these certain things, that there is such innate wisdom within us. And it really is, for me, the highest guidance, the highest intelligence. We need the intellectual, analytical intelligence as well, certainly, to weigh all the pros and cons of certain business decisions. But I have come to really, really trust my intuitive sense to take me forward in each step of my business as it's evolved over the many years that I've been doing this.
Okay, no, that's interesting. You definitely got me interested now. So yes, for anybody that's kind of not really thought about intuition much, there's a phrase that we kind of hear, women's intuition, sometimes. That's probably to some extent as much as anyone's heard of it. To the unlearned, obviously, I meant. What's the benefit then? You mentioned it's kind of like an inner guide, or what would be the benefit for somebody running a business that is kind of happy to put the exercise quota in there, 10,000 steps there, 2 or 3 classes a day of exercise in one form or another. But how, because you're very good at focusing on kind of the whole person, I think, rather than just, as you say, the physical side of yoga. It's the emotional side. How can we dig into intuition, or how can we really benefit to it if we've never touched on it before? Lots of questions there, sorry. Go on. Yeah, help us to understand intuition more.
Yes, thank you. That's a great open-ended question. So firstly, just to say that this is not relegated just to women. All human beings have intuition. And so maybe we should just define the term a little bit. So I would call intuition a sense. So we have the 5 senses: touch, taste, smell, sight, hearing. And the 6th sense is our intuitive sense. So it's a sensory experience, but it's less tangible maybe than those 5 senses that we think of in the physical dimension. But it is something that we all have. That said, it's not developed in each one of us. So there are people, let's take kind of the outlying side of the intuitives, maybe the empaths or the clairvoyants or the psychics, who have this capacity to sort of tap wisdom or information that's beyond what we might be able to see in the here and now. But backtrack it a little bit, and in the middle range of the spectrum, between somebody who's never thought of this topic at all to those who rely on it for their professions, there's all the rest of us. And all the rest of us have intuition. And the way that we can develop this sense of knowing, it's a sense of knowing something without yet having tangible physical proof of it. For instance, if I am creating a new workshop, let's say, that has to do in some aspect of the topics that I teach on, I spend quite a bit of time in my meditation, after my meditation. So meditation is really getting the mind quiet. And then at the end of meditation, when my mind is more quiet and I'm not busy with all the restless kind of analytical thinking, there's this period of stillness in which I can drop a question in, such as, what would be the best topic for this workshop that I'm developing? And I trust my intuition to give me that right answer. And I've spent enough time doing this sort of practice that I really do know when I've gotten the intuitive answer versus just more busy mind. And the way I can tell, 2 of the marks of an intuitive response are they're very peaceful and they're very consistent. So it's not going to vary from moment to moment. I'm going to have a steady sense that this is the right course of action, and I'm going to feel very peaceful about following it. So that's how I know that my intuition has delivered some information that I can really trust and move forward with. So to jump, if you don't mind, if I'll just jump a little bit into the book Spark Change, because it is the reason why I wrote this book of questions, because there is such power in questions, open-ended questions that we offer to ourselves. So this book is it's a book of questions meant for self-reflection. And one of the best times to utilize it is after a period of sitting in stillness, where you've done a practice like following your breath to just quiet the body, relax the mind. And then there's that fertile field in which we can access that intuitive sense that delivers us information for our next right steps forward, which to me is critical for anyone in business. So these 108 questions that I offer in the book Spark Change are meant for this practice of self-reflection, and it's very much meant to help people tune into that intuitive wisdom.
Okay, well, that sounds good. Just curious, 108, is that a magic number, or?
Yes, it is, sort of. And I never answered this question in interviews. I've been asked it many times, and I always say you gotta read the book. So there's a big explanation of it in the introduction, and it is very significant. It was chosen intentionally. It's an anciently significant number in many different traditions, but particularly yoga. So I'll leave it at that.
That's good. You've got us inquisitive now. I like that. I like that. So let's just, when you were talking about intuition, I get the impression that we use intuition a lot more than we realize. It's the hunch, isn't it? It's kind of the unnerving feeling if you're approaching something a bit round the corner, which might be dodgy, which you don't really know, or yeah, just lots of different ways to describe it. I think you're right, and I think the fact that you've been able to kind of explain it like that hopefully will help the audience, and it also kind of sharpens me thinking, yeah, I do use it more than I don't always stop and think that was my intuition, which is just the level of self-awareness I'm at the point. Within the coaching sphere, I use it a lot. You can't coach properly without intuition, can you?
That's very true. And I agree that I think most people use it more than they're aware of. Where I think people get caught up sometimes is they'll have that hunch, like you said, but then what happens very quickly is they doubt themselves. Yeah. And so their mind comes on board and it starts to throw all the reasons why that hunch might not be correct because there's no proof to it yet. Yeah. And so one of the things we have to learn is self-trust, the ability to stop and listen to that, what you're calling a hunch or I'm calling intuition, and not second guess it, not doubt ourselves, but really sit with self-trust. And so there are ways of developing that self-trust, one of which is just to keep a record of those hunches. So when you've had a hunch and you followed it and it's turned out well, or when you've had a hunch and you've not followed it and it's not turned out well, because you can start to build a bit of history or social proof for yourself, internal proof, that in fact, this inner guidance system, this intuition that we all have is there for your highest good. But it does take a bit of practice.
Yeah, it's an undeveloped skill, isn't it? It's not, I wouldn't say it's a gift, because as you say, we've all got it to some extent, and it's just being aware of it and realizing the value of it. If you realize the value of what you have, you're gonna, if you're smart, you're going to develop it more. You're going to give room to it, aren't you? I like what you said about it. It kind of two fruits of, in a sense, is peace, consistency. And I've found that if it's not a decision I need to make urgently, then kind of intuition is the same tomorrow as it is today. That the leading that I'm getting, the prompting, it doesn't suddenly completely change the next day and wants me to go in a different direction. It just feels, if you've got the time to kind of test it, I think, yeah, the consistency of it will prove itself.
Definitely. Yeah, what often happens with people who come into my coaching practice are they're coming in because they're feeling a sense of disconcertedness in their life. Something isn't flowing well. They sense that they need a change in some way. They're unhappy, restless, and discontent in some way. Again, maybe it's in their work life, maybe it's in their personal life, but they don't see clearly the way forward. So again, the first chapter in Spark Change has to do with identifying the changes that need to be made. And that is a big part of using our intuition to really get clear, because we might be, let's say, feeling discontent in our career, but maybe it's not that we need to completely change careers. It's just that we need to dial in what we're doing in a way that is more aligned with who we are. So one of the practices that I do at the beginning of every year, since we're at the beginning of the year, is to look at where I'm expending my energy in my work life and determine where the inequities are. So if I'm putting 30 hours into workshop development, but I'm only making a small fraction of my income from workshops, that's a bad expenditure of energy. So I'm always looking at, reassessing where I can come into the greatest alignment with what is truest for who I am in this moment, because that certainly changes. We all evolve. Yeah. But you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, so. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you're right. Like, business people, we understand or would easily kind of recognize the benefit of what's the return on the investment that I'm putting in. So kind of pound, dollar, whatever it is that we're using, that makes perfect sense. But one of the good things you've pointed out is the fact that that's just part of the way we can measure our return on investment. It is like, what's giving me peace, isn't it? What's my energy going on that maybe won't translate into money, but is it bringing joy? Is it bringing satisfaction? Is it bringing peace? Or am I just getting wound up and I can't switch off because there's always something else I need to think about? Kind of fill in the blanks. I'm sure there's lots of different scenarios we could put in that blank space. So thank you for helping and sharing us with that.
Can I just say one quick thing on that note? Yeah, is that energy is a resource. So we think of monetary resources, but our energy is a resource. And I think anyone who has ever had a health crisis can attest to that. If you don't have your health and your full energy, you are really at a disadvantage in doing the things that you want to do in life. So it's very, very precious. Our life force energy is very precious, and we do need to look at it as a resource. So how are we expending it on any given day or year?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's almost like the forgotten element. You think of money, you think of time, but yeah, energy. Like, you could have all the time in the world, but if you're not utilizing your energy in a positive way, that's kind of helping you and also someone outside your world as well, then yeah, it's like, the purpose of living gets a bit fuzzy then, I think, at least from my perspective anyway. So like I would recommend everybody goes through coaching at some point, because I've seen the benefit as well, but I'm slightly biased in that area, and I know you are as well. For people that maybe aren't at that point, because I also know coaching is not for everyone all the time. I think you have to be in a place where you're ready. And maybe for people that are listening and are thinking, yeah, this seems the right thing that I need, but I'm not sure I'm at step one yet. What would be some of the kind of practical things today, tomorrow, that would help move people to a place of better balance, if you like, sharpening their intuition, getting the balance of how they're expending their energy in good things, how they're dealing with some of the emotion stuff, which maybe they're hiding because they're busy with stuff, because they know that if I'm busy, I don't have to think about certain things. Lots of different pathways people are on, but what would be sort of some of the first practical things that would head people in the right direction to get them to the point where they sit and they go through the 108 sort of inquisitive questions?
So, I mean, I did write the book for people who maybe were not ready to step into a face-to-face or Zoom-to-Zoom coaching session. You know, that can feel a bit much for some people, although it is probably becoming more and more familiar to all of us now. But having a book what I wanted to do with Spark Change was quantify the types of questions that I asked to clients in a book format that people could hold in their own hands in the silence and privacy of their own homes and work through it at their own pace. So, but before someone could even get to the point of choosing a book like this and taking the time to maybe reflect on these questions, they need to decide that they're worth it, that their happiness is worth investing some time in. You know, we invest, again, we've been talking about investment of time and energy and money. We invest so much into those outer pursuits, but the inner pursuit of really getting to know our deepest self, our truest self, our highest self, that part of ourself that came into expression in this particular unique way, is, to me, one of the most important things that we can do in this life. So I would say, decide that you're worth it. Worth investing time in and energy, and relax with it. Because, as you mentioned, sometimes people stay busy because they're a little bit unsure about what feelings might arise or what thoughts might arise if they pause and stop and rest. And I would say, be courageous, because what happens when we do stop and rest and take those moments to listen internally to what's present, whether that's a feeling or something that is frightening us, or is that those things that we've been using so much energy to hold back, suddenly they're just moving on through. You know, they're with us for a moment and then they move on. So maybe it's been a fear of, let's say, taking your business to the next level, putting yourself out there in some way that you haven't before. I know for me this past year, it was about getting comfortable on video and doing video vlogging. And that wasn't something that I was really comfortable with. And I just decided one day, well, okay, so I'm afraid. Let's just try it. I can turn on my computer, I can record some, I can make a bunch of mistakes, and it's not the end of the world. I can throw them all out, but I'm going to get myself over this fear. And now, honestly, I don't even think about it. Like, I do it often every week, and I'm totally comfortable talking to the little circle on the computer. And I just imagine all those wonderful people out there that, you know, I would talk to in my workshops if we were live, and I try to connect with them from heart to heart. And so those fears that we spend a lot of energy holding back by staying busy and not really giving time to ourselves become a lot less if we just are courageous and take a little moment to look at them, feel them, and then let them move on through. So we are incredibly courageous and resilient humans. And I just encourage everyone to invest in yourself in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. That's very well said. Yeah, it's realizing every now and again that, yeah, we're not money making machines. We are human beings, and we're quite complex in a kind of simple way. The way we're made up, like you say, yeah, the emotions can affect the physical can affect the emotions, and it really is valuing ourselves enough to give ourselves time to process stuff, to heal when we need to heal, and to just kind of re-examine, am I really heading where I want to go? You know, what is the stuff that I'm getting back from what I'm doing? Is it putting me in the place that I want to go? Is anybody else benefiting from what I'm doing? Or is my world shrunk to the point where, you know, it doesn't go outside my house, kind of thing? So I appreciate the way that you've been able to kind of unpack some of that. It certainly gets us thinking a lot more. Hopefully the listeners are enjoying it as much as I am. And it just gets us thinking more about the balance between what we kind of label as important, what we say in our head's important, and the stuff in our heart that's important. I think if we can, like you say, kind of get the match between those to the right extent, I think, yeah, that's what makes us successful, isn't it, really? Whether that brings the most amount of money or not, I think the well-being of the individual has got to be paramount, really. You've mentioned your book. You got us curious with that. I won't quiz you too much on the 108 questions because I want people to go and read it and to spend time thinking about it. I also understand and appreciate the value of questions more than answers. It's like, if we only rely on the answers we've currently got, we're not going to progress anywhere. Whereas if we actually reflect and allow other people to ask us questions as well, suddenly our awareness rises, doesn't it? We get different things that we hadn't thought about before because we need each other. There is an external input that we need from time to time. Friends, family, coaches, mentors, in whatever form it takes. I think regularly we do need that. But you've mentioned also kind of a few bumps in your life as well, and how you've transitioned in several stages from kind of running the centre, doing the coaching, issues with family. Don't want to dig too deep if it's personal, but just I mention it more because it's a reflection of there's business transition and there's kind of personal, emotional transitions as well. And you've said that, I'm doing a lot of talking here, and I want you to do the talking because you're the expert on this. But I kind of want to preface it, if you like, by you've survived ups and downs, not just in the year that we've all just had, but you've transitioned well, and you've got yourself to a place where you're able to then help others as well. What would be, as well as the things you mentioned about trying to get the balance and raise our level of self-awareness, what would be good things that help people just kind of go through the ups and downs, go through the transitions, if they're getting the prompting that actually I really do need to make some drastic changes here? What would be some of the things that you would sort of suggest that would help us to navigate the rough seas, shall we say?
Well, I can share one thing that helped me. There were many years, several decades actually, of really challenging life circumstances, a lot of deaths in my family, divorce, cross-country moves, the loss of a child. I mean, I really had the life lessons coming in spades in terms of pain. And I do believe that life teaches us through painful experiences, and that we are meant to learn through the challenges that we are faced with. Everybody's challenges are different, but every life has challenges. And I fully believe that we are meant to learn through those. That being said, I got to a point at which I started saying to the universe, enough already with the lessons in pain. I want to learn through joy. And this became my mantra. I just started claiming for myself that I was going to learn through joy. And it was probably 6 or 7 years where life just kept hitting me with the pain experiences. And I did my practice. I was self-reflective. I would look at what I was meant to learn through each one that came. I've always been somebody who's been very self-reflective, and with the studies in psychology and yoga philosophy, it just reinforced the need for that introspective practice. But I would, at the same time, I would continue affirming out loud, often, always daily to myself internally, that I was learning through joy. Learning through joy. I'm learning through joy. I am learning through joy. I'm claiming joy for myself. And I want to just give people permission to do this. You can learn through joy. If you're listening to this, here's your permission slip. I don't care how much pain you've had in your life. You can turn it around. You can learn through joy. And I am a living testament of this, because now my life is incredible joy. I'm living where I want to live. I'm happily married. I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing in my career. I feel fulfilled and in service to the people that I work with. I'm validated by the people I work with. And so I have turned, and it's because I was willing to learn through the pain, and I was adamant about choosing joy. So take the permission slip and run with it, everybody.
Absolutely, yes. It's one of the things you touched on very at the start of as we were chatting, was proactivity, isn't it? You have to be proactive. Perspective is huge as well, as you say. You shift it from I'm going to learn from pain to I'm learning through joy, and just in that you can start to see, okay, I can make this work for me rather than it crush me or pull me down where I don't want to go. So yeah, I think courage was another key word that you mentioned, that it does take courage to be proactive at times when we face the things that I think deep down a lot of the time we know they're for our benefit, but it's just uncomfortable and kind of, somewhere we don't really want to go today. Maybe tomorrow, but not today.
Yeah, there's a lot of energy expended resisting the pain. So, I mean, every life is going to have pain, and my life will have more pain. I don't think I'm like outside of the pain box now. I'm sure there will be uncomfortable things that come to me, but it's your relationship to it, right? So if you, again, it's that energy expenditure. If you're spending energy resisting it, trying to hold it back, not look at it, not feel it, that's a whole bunch of energy that you don't have to put into the good things that life has for you and the joyful things that your spirit can call you towards.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I'm reminded of several occasions where I know there's something I need to do, and I have in my mind that, I need to do that. And I push it off and do a few other things first. And then I come around and I actually do it. And it's done in it could be a task that takes 2 minutes, but I've spent X amount of minutes, probably, I could say hours, maybe I don't want to admit that. But yeah, just thinking about it, and it's grown in my head to be a lot more than what it actually was. And it's just like, just get on and do it. Life is bigger, isn't it? So yes, no, that's good. So I think everyone there can take quite a few things away from our discussion today. Thank you for sharing. Before we kind of close it off, you have a website. What would be the best way for people to reach out to get in touch with you?
Yes, my website is my name, Jennie Lee, JennieLee, yogatherapy.com. So JennieLeeYogaTherapy.com. There is a free excerpt available of Spark Change on the website, as well as some free bonus guides for coaches, yoga teachers, book clubs, all kinds of good things on there, freebies. So would love it if you came to the website and just checked out my offerings and my books and got your free freebies.
Absolutely.
And if you're interested in coaching, there's information about my coaching practice there as well. I do work over Zoom with people all over the world, so it's beautiful to connect with people in all different stages of their journey. And after having done this for 22 years, I'm happy to meet you wherever you are.
That sounds good. And there's a retreat as well, somewhere exotic, isn't there?
Well, fingers crossed. There will be a retreat in Italy this September. Yes, it was postponed from last year, so I am fully visioning a joyful retreat in Italy this September, and there are still a couple of spaces, so that's on the website as well. I also have a group coaching series that's starting on January 9th, so it's that's also a kind of a low impact way to dip your toe into coaching. If you're not quite ready to do one-on-one, face-to-face, that's a nice option. So there's information on that as well.
That sounds good. Yeah, I would definitely recommend everybody that's listening to certainly head to your website and be proactive, investigate, find out maybe some things that you'd not really thought about before listening to us today. Just get involved so that you can benefit, so that your life gets to a higher level, and then you can, the knock on, the outworking of that is you help other people as well. So brilliant. Thank you, Jennie. Hopefully you'll come back and chat to us again sometime. For now, we must wrap it up just because of time restraints. But no, thank you for all that you've shared. I've taken a lot away from it, and I'm sure everyone listening will as well. So that's brilliant. There will be a link to your website. Wherever you're clicking to listen to this podcast, there'll be a link to that there. Just before I close it out for today, just want to let everybody know as well that Yokai is running a lifestyle mastermind group. It's now open for registration. It runs throughout the year, and it covers 4 different aspects of life. So they're all kind of all wrapping nicely with the different elements that we've talked about today. Obviously, in addition to Jennie's coaching and getting her book, don't do it instead of. There's room in your life for all of that, I'm sure. But there'll be a link for that as well. So check out below. That's the quick advert out of the way, but just wanted to let you know that it's there if you want to take advantage of it. So that's brilliant. So thanks, Jennie, once again for joining us. Look forward to you coming back another time. And thanks everyone for listening. Again, I'm Trevor Stockwell. I've really enjoyed chatting today and all the things we've shared. I hope you can take something away, be proactive with it, and make your life get better. Okay, until next time.
Thank you for listening to Yokai Business Show. We will be back to bring you more episodes with success stories and advice straight from the experts. Want more? Check out www.yukaibusinessshow.com. Get your free trial of our virtual assistant service today. Just visit www.worldoutsourcingsolutions.com. Quote WOS18 or send us an email at support@worldoutsourcingsolutions.com.